Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Good Vibes FC. I'm Sam Mewis, coming to you from the Women's Game World Headquarters in Vermont.
And I'm Becky Sauerbrunn, coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Becky, I'm so excited we're back. I know we've been doing Olympics podcasts together all throughout the summer for the last couple weeks, but it's our first official Good Vibes back for like weeks. It feels like it's been years. So we need to just start with a quick Good Vibes summer update. Becky, how has your summer been going? Is it the end of summer yet? No, I refuse to believe that.
I certainly hope it's the end of summer because I am just so ready for fall. I had a great summer, Sammy. No joke. Footy with friends. I'm always going to have a great time. But I am just so sick of being hot and layering on so many coats of sunscreen and just gallons and gallons of electrolytes. I have no air conditioning in this house. My cats are sick of it. I'm sick of it. I need fall. I need rain and cloud cover.
And hot tea and a blanket.
Yes, exactly. That is what I need. Great summer. I am so ready for fall.
Oh my God, that is so interesting to me. I love fall too. Everybody knows I'm a freaking fall girly, but I'm not giving up on summer yet. I have loved the summer. I've been in my summer camp, adult activities era. So I've been loving that. I don't know if I'm ready for fall yet.
Yeah, I guess when does fall technically start?
I don't know. Do you know the date?
It's September 22nd-ish or something like that. So you still got time. You got
plenty
of time.
Then. It's still summer. I still got a month. All right. Well, that's great. My summer, yeah, like I said, it's been going great. I'm really enjoying Vermont. I'm really enjoying all my outdoor activities. I've been riding my bike a lot, Becky, which I love. I've been swimming in the lake a lot, which I love. So summer has been good. I do not miss school at all. That's how I'm feeling.
Well, I'm happy for you. I'm happy you get another month of it. I'll just suffer over here. Until fall starts.
Well, we did so much Olympics coverage as well. You and I worked together on covering the U.S. Women's National Team as they won the Olympics, which was really, really fun, but really busy. And you've also been playing a ton of soccer, which we're going to get to a little bit on this podcast. So let's get right to it. Today on the podcast, we're going to celebrate that freaking U.S. Women's National Team gold medal.
Woo.
And then we're going to catch everybody up on what's been going on in the NWSL and what's ahead as league play resumes this weekend. Plus, we have some updates on big moves around the world and from our summer breaks. And we got an email from Evelyn to discuss what type of bread we each are, Becky. That's the email I picked out for today.
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you, Evelyn. But before we get to all that, we're the self-anointed Lisa Frank and Trapper Keeper of women's soccer because it's back to school time. Unfortunately, summer is coming to an end, everybody. But good news is the NWSL is back. Good Vibes is back. It's almost fall. It's almost chill and crisp out there in the air for Becky. She's sweating. Okay, let's get into it. First things first, Becky, the U.S. Women's National Team won the Olympics.
Woo!
I know. It was so crazy. So we went to the Olympics this summer. New coach, Emma Hayes, fresh from Chelsea, where she spent years kicking ass and taking names. And this team, the U.S. won the entire tournament. They are gold medalists. Emma has only coached this team for 10 games, 6 of which were at the Olympics. So, Becky, I feel like we have let's go through some questions about how we got here. A year ago, 10 months ago, everybody's worried that the U.S. has fallen behind the rest of the world after such a disappointing World Cup. Now we're back on top. We just won the Olympics. We're gold medalists. We're back to first in the FIFA rankings. I want to talk about what it was. What brought us from where we were a year ago to where we are now? Was it a change in player talent? Was the front three playing well at the right time? Was it just the team was more youthful and trusting in the process more? If you had to point to just a couple of things that changed that worked for us, what would they be?
That's a great question. And I think we have to go back to the World Cups that we won and remember how we won them. And in some cases, maybe we were a little bit more dominant. And sometimes, we got a PK at the right time or we stopped a PK at the right time. And so the increments to winning to losing were so small. And sometimes in 15 and 19, it bounced the right way for us. And then in 23, it didn't bounce the right way for us. We play Sweden and arguably the best game that we played in 2023 World Cup. And we lose by a millimeter on a PK shootout. So it's just these minor, small units that can mean the difference between winning and losing. And I'm not going to say it's just that. I do think that there were other things with 2023, but I do think we need to remember that our disappointment in 2023, I do think we took it a little further than it needed to be. It wasn't this huge failure that everyone thought it was. So I think we did kind of blow that a little bit out of proportion.
I kind of agree with that. I think that the media and the fans, like, what happened in 2023, maybe we like overreacted to that a little bit. Like, to your point, winning and losing is such a small margin, and we did just barely lose to Sweden in that penalty kick shootout. And yes, the performance was not like super inspiring at times. I think it left a lot to be desired, and there were certainly problems on the field that we didn't see get addressed within that tournament. It got a little bit better in that Sweden game, but to then look at this Olympics and see that we won our first two knockout games in extra time by 1 goal, and to just know how small those increments are and how close we could have been to not going through those games, I think is a really good point. But could we be overreacting now? Like, if we overreacted to the World Cup loss, could we be overreacting to the gold medal and saying, oh my God, we're back and we're the best? Or is this something we can really take to heart now and be like, we're back number one, all is right?
I mean, I think that'll become like a hindsight once we go into the next World Cup and we see how the team does. And then we look back and say, oh, we didn't or we did overreact. But I am going with like my feeling about this team during the Olympics.
Yeah.
And it just felt, and I've used this word a bunch, inevitable. Like we were always going to find a way. And I think that instilled a lot of confidence in me because I haven't necessarily felt that type of way for a little bit when it comes to the team. And so I just have, and it's such a young team as well. And so I think that same core group will be together for these next several years. And I think they're just going to build on that chemistry because I do think they had great chemistry on the field, especially that front three. And then you look at the back line that just did so great. Yeah. So it's just like a strong group that's going to stay together. So I can only see them getting better.
I agree with you on that. I think, and this kind of brings me into talking about Emma Hayes a little bit. Again, she's only coached this team for 10 games. She is coming from such a winning run at Chelsea, and she brought this great mentality to this team. She, I feel like, selected players who were really bought in. The chemistry of the group felt, like you said, inevitable. It felt really positive. It felt like the beginning of something really special. And so now I'm thinking, our journey through the past year, how much of this change that we've seen and felt, like you said, you felt something different from this group, how much of that is due to Emma?
That's a great question. I think whenever you bring in a new coach, there is this period of you're flying high. You know, all the players want to perform well for the new coach. They want the playing time. They want to be selected for the roster. I also think Emma, just like with her whole chest, is just like, I'm a winner. And I think that's really contagious. And I think for this group of players, none of them who had won a gold medal before, to have a coach that's like, I'm a winner, I've won a lot of things, you will also be winners. I'm sure that instilled a lot of confidence and bravery into the group. And I think we definitely, like, it was a tangible thing. You could feel it.
Yeah, I agree. I think Emma's role was huge. I think that just kind of building the momentum as they went through the tournament too, because I can't get over that last send-off game we had against Costa Rica when we didn't score. I don't think the momentum started there, like, especially not from the outside. I think that was when everybody was like asking questions of this group. I think it wasn't really until they got to France and we started seeing them play in these Olympics games and we started seeing things click and we were scoring goals and they were answering some of these questions. Like, it just built so quickly. And I think, to your point, it must have been Emma's belief and Emma's confidence that kind of seeped through the rest of the team. With that said, had Emma been the coach in 2023, could we have done this then? Or were these players maybe not ready? Like, another thing I want to just factor into this question is, like, I do think that sometimes you need a really difficult, like, loss to rally around and, like, serve as the fuel to the fire. So I guess I'm curious if we needed 2023 to go the way it did in order to have this great turnaround, or with a few factors changed, could we have done this a year ago?
Oh, that is an impossible question, Sammy. I think we've talked about before the power of having something to galvanize a group. And in 2019, equal pay, I think that kind of brought us together, among other things. And then I think losing in 2023, I think that absolutely can galvanize a group, because this group of players, and I was in that group for a little bit this year, they wanted to prove everybody wrong. And that can be really motivating, in that you go into the Olympics and you're like, I am going to send a message to the world that this new era of the women's national team is here and it is dominant.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think you're exactly right. It's like it served as like a kind of like trauma bonding. Like it was like so bad that everybody was like, well, we're definitely not doing that again. And I think you're right to say it galvanized the group. I also think this does feel like the beginning in so many ways. I think this team is really young. Emma is new, and we feel like, I think a lot of times with world tournaments, it feels like a chapter is closing because maybe players are retiring, or maybe the coach is leaving, or something's about to change after this big tournament. Maybe that group will never be together again. And I got this feeling talking to some of the girls after the tournament, like Rose and Sonnet and Lynn, just kind of listening to what they were saying, like this feels like the start under Emma. And so when I think about this group and the potential that they have moving forward, and the idea that we for sure have more time with Emma and with this group of players. And then I think about some of the players who weren't there, some of the other youth that will be options moving forward, like Lily Johannes. Kat Macario wasn't at this tournament. Mia Fischel has been out injured. This group of players is like going back to school and getting a fresh box of new pencils. And it's like, we already had all this other great stuff, and now we have this other fresh box of new sharpened pencils from the store. Who of these players do you think is like poised to enter an already successful team and have a huge impact?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I am a big fan of Croy Bethune, and I think her playing in that attacking midfield role, what she's done for the Spirit, what I think she can do for the national team, I think that's really exciting.
I completely agree. I think that our forwards this tournament were so stellar and incredible and like standout players. And I think our backline was very similar. I think in some ways, just because the forwards in the backline did like 11 out of 10 good, I think that the midfield was left. There were people asking some questions of the midfield in this tournament. And so I do see opportunity moving forward to bring in some other young midfielders and see if they can rise to this level. So somebody like Lily Johannes, who has only played a tiny, tiny bit for the U.S. women's national team, but is such an exciting young teenager playing for Ajax in the Netherlands. I think it's really, really exciting knowing that we have these players who potentially could play for us and just continue contributing to what's already a winning and successful team. So zooming out, big picture, the ship's been righted. The U.S. women's national team won gold for the first time since 2012. And Becky, you were on that team in 2012. Just give us a brief, like, how do you think these players are feeling? How does it feel to win a gold medal at the Olympics?
It's so awesome. It's really cool. And I think just universally, it's understood that being a gold medalist is like such a feat and an accomplishment. And I think that's so great that they all get to feel that. And I think watching this group win made me really nostalgic and like thinking back on 2012 and if there were any like comparisons to the groups. And it's so funny because Sammy, you were talking about like all the TikToks that the players were putting out and how fun they seemed like they were having with one another and how tight knit. And I was like, God, I think we did something like that in 2012. And I was like, you know what it was? We did like a whole music video to Party in the USA. And I was like, no way that's on the internet. And so I actually looked it up. It's on YouTube. And so I watched it and I was just like, it's like our millennial TikTok, but it just felt so great watching it. And it was like, oh, it just took me back. It took me back. And
what can people search to find this video?
I just put USWNT Party in the USA and it popped right up there.
Oh my God.
Right up. And it was so fun just seeing the players on the roster at the time and how tight it we were. And it brought me back to like winning the gold, what it felt like, the party afterwards. Like we partied so hard and it was so fun. And I'm just so glad that this team gets to experience like all of it. It's like, it's so much of it is a journey and the Olympics is a very difficult journey. So few get to be at the end of that journey on the mountaintop. And this team got to do that. It's so rare. So I hope they are just loving every second of it.
I know. I think they're getting to the point now where they're probably all heading back to their club teams, getting ready to start playing again for the NWSL. And I think just the past 10 days for them of winning and then soaking that all in and getting to take a little bit of a break must have felt so nice to just have that. It's like that moment of relief before you have to start thinking about the next thing again, where you just try to enjoy it for as long as you can. But probably right around now, right around 10 days, they're starting to be like, okay, I have a game again soon. I have to start doing the next thing and thinking about the NWSL. So I hope that they really enjoyed this past week and got to like have some downtime and rest their bodies a little bit. And I did just want to read this quote that Emma Hayes had said after the final, kind of along the lines of this just being the beginning for this team. Emma said, "We are so looking forward to the things we can do together. We want so much more for ourselves because we're competitors, but we're just at the beginning, about 75 days in, baby." Which is, again, crazy. It's so exciting to know that we have such a bright future for this team. But it's time to leave the Olympics behind, sadly. We're moving on to what's next. I did want to add a quick note to everybody. The Olympics may be over, but the Paralympics start August 28th. And they do have men's blind football. It's like five-a-side football adapted for athletes with a vision impairment. And the U.S. does not have a team competing in this event, but still an incredible sport to watch these athletes compete in. So I'm going to be watching out for men's blind football at the Paralympics starting August 28th. Okay, Becky, moving ahead, I'm very happy to report the NWSL is coming back. We're getting our lunch boxes. We're putting them in our backpacks. It is time to go. This is where we are at in the season. 16 of 26 regular season games have already been played, so there's 10 games left. Orlando's in first place on 38 points, followed closely by Kansas City with 35, the Washington Spirit with 34, Gotham with 31, and Portland with 27. Down at the bottom, we have the Royals with just 9 points, but 10 games is a big opportunity to swing, and anything can happen in the Chaos League. Orlando's Barbara Banda and Kansas City's Temwa Chewinga are tied in the Golden Boot race with 12 goals apiece. Soph Smith has 10 goals and is in third place. Anything from that stand out to you, Becky? Anything there? Do you see any big swings, any big changes? Anybody who's going to get into that Golden Boot race that we haven't mentioned?
I just think that 10 games in the NWSL, so much can happen.
It's like
so many points that can be had. So I know you just gave the listing of that order. I don't know if it's going to be anything like that near the end.
I know, it's crazy. I love it so much. I actually just, along these lines, I just did a Friendlies interview with Esme Morgan. It came out last week. Esme Morgan is an English defender who just signed with the Washington Spirit from Manchester City. And I asked her why she chose the NWSL. And she said that sometimes in the WSL where she's played before, because there's a relegation battle going on, some teams at the bottom of I'm paraphrasing from Esme. Sometimes teams at the bottom of the table just don't want to lose points. So they play to tie. So they just sit back. And she said, but the NWSL never does that, because on any given day, 14th place could beat first place. You just don't know. So all the games are exciting and they're all open and it's never like a parked bus. And I think I've thought, I guess, about that before, but never really in those terms, that's why she as a young player chose to come here. And it just struck me as wow, yeah, this league really is, anything can happen on any given day, because maybe partly because we don't have relegation.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. And Esme is in for a treat, because every single game you're just like, what is going to happen today? Because you really do not know, because all the teams are supremely talented. It's fun because they're all starting to get their own identities. And yeah, I mean, on any given day, you're right, anyone can beat anybody.
I know. It's crazy. I am really excited for the NWSL to be back, because it just brings that dose of unpredictability to your weekend that you really need.
You gotta love it.
I know. Okay, so speaking of Esme Morgan, she's just signed with the Washington Spirit. And there were some other really big signings this summer. Angel City signed Katie Zellum from Manchester United, who's longtime captain of United and a Lionesses defensive midfielder. That's a big signing for Angel City. The Utah Royals signed Canadian attacker Chloe Lacasse from Arsenal. And then Gotham signed Portuguese attacker Jessica Silva from Benfica, who's actually played in the league previously with Kansas City. And Gotham also signed England defender Jess Carter from Chelsea. Becky, what do you know about these players, and which of them are immediate game changers for their new clubs?
Well, my first question is, how is Gotham just acquiring all this talent? I mean, Yael Averbuch, well done. Claps to you, general manager. You are doing a fine job. My eyes to Katie Zellum. You know, when I watch the English league, she's someone that's always stood out to me. I think the way that she plays, the feistiness, the technical ability, like she's always kind of caught my eye. And so I'm really excited to see what she can do with City. What about you, Sammy? Who really stands out to you?
You know, there have been some changes there. We've seen some players sign with this new USL Super League. And I think who I'm really excited to see, aside from Esme, who everybody knows I love, she was my good friend on Man City, so I won't just say Esme. I am really excited to see Jess Carter play for Gotham. I think she's a really exciting signing. She has so much experience with Chelsea, played a lot in the Champions League, and I think she's a great defender. And I think, again, like the NWSL just presents such new challenges, so I'm excited to see her play in this league. But Becky, I do want to get into what's been going on during the Olympics break, the NWSL and Liga MX Summer Cup. I want to hear like how that has been going for your team. Like, what are your takeaways from this summer-long crossover tournament?
Oh, I loved it. I think it was really fun to have competitive matches. And I also think having something new by playing Mexican teams. So we played Tijuana our first game, and it was just so fun to play against people that you don't know very well.
Yeah.
The style's a little different, like the fun that we had after the match, just like kind of catching up and getting to know one another. And so I think it's just a great opportunity to showcase talent both from Liga MX and from the NWSL, for players to get competitive minutes, for teams to try new tactics. I know with Portland, we were trying some new things. And so it was just like it was fun. And I'm really glad that we participated in it. I will say though that, so there were 5 groups and only 4 advanced to the semi and finals. So Portland didn't win our group, Utah did, but even Utah then didn't get to advance. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad.
Oh my God, poor Utah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I guess the format seems like, in order to fit all the teams, I guess, it seems like it was just a tough format. So the semifinalists were Kansas City and North Carolina, and then Gotham and Angel City. And Kansas City and Gotham won. So they'll play each other for the final in like 2 months on October 25th, which is kind of a ways away.
It is a little bit of a ways away, but I'm really excited for that too. It's always fun to play in a championship match.
I know. Winning a trophy is just...
It's so fun.
It's just the freaking best. Speaking of trophies, there is another big tournament that's coming up starting tonight, the Concacaf Champions Cup. And so this cup is actually part of a bigger thing. It's the qualifying process for the Club World Cup. There are 3 NWSL teams competing in this CONCACAF Champions Cup, and they are San Diego Wave, Portland Thorns, and Gotham FC. So, Becky, you guys have another tournament going on.
Yes, we do. So the possibility of getting to play in a Club World Cup is really awesome. It's like kind of crazy to think that it's not for a few years, but also excited to be able to qualify for that. We have so many games, Sammy, coming up in a short amount of time because of all these added competitions, but it's also really awesome. I think we've got like 15 games in like 50 days or something. So my schedule is about to get wild, but it's all like good stuff. It's all footy with friends. And so no real complaints there.
All right. So this is how the CONCACAF Champions Cup is going to go. It's 2 groups of 5 teams each. The group stage will occur this fall, and then knockout rounds will occur next spring. The teams are all the leaders across CONCACAF. They've qualified with last season's standings. So this is how it's going to go down. Landon Donovan, the new Wave FC manager, and we'll get more into that in a second, he gets his first test with the San Diego Wave at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight as they take on Santa Fe FC out of Panama, which is definitely going to be worth watching. And then Portland and Gotham get their first matches on September 4th and 5th, respectively. Becky, having just played in the Liga MX matches, do you think you'll prepare differently for these international club games than for these regular NWSL matches where you maybe like are more familiar with the competition? Like, how does preparation look?
Well, for when we played Tijuana, they had just started their summer aspect of their season because they're on a different schedule cadence than us. So they had only played 1 or 2 matches. So for our preparation, it was really like, we can't really tell you a whole lot. Like, this is how they played, but it might not be how they play against us. And so that was just one instance of going into a match where we really weren't quite sure what the game plan for them was going to be. I think now it'll be a lot easier to prepare. There's been several more games being played all across the world. And so I think the footage will be there. It's really now just like, can you get access to that footage? I think in the NWSL, it's very easy to find footage of different games because it's just everywhere now. It's a little bit more difficult around CONCACAF. But the physical preparation, like the things that you do as a team as far as like technique, tactics, that all will absolutely stay the same. There's really, I don't think, any difference in that kind of preparation.
Yeah, that I got it. That makes sense. Well, aside from these other tournaments that are kind of concurrently going on, NWSL regular season action is about to resume this weekend. Friday night, we have Houston versus Orlando at 8 p.m. and then Utah versus Bay at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Then on Saturday, everybody, circle Saturday on your calendars. Gotham is playing Portland. I'm going to the game. Becky's team is playing Lynn's team. I'm so excited. It's the Good Vibes Derby. It's at 2:30 p.m. I cannot wait to be there and cheer on everybody. And then on Sunday, we have second and third place Kansas City and Washington Spirit facing off in a DC doubleheader that also includes Chelsea playing Arsenal, which is a really cool event. And that actually brings us to the Olipop gut check of the week, Becky. Now that Triple Espresso, Mal Swanson, Sophia Smith, and Trinity Rodman are back to being 3 single-shot espressos with their club teams, who's going to have the biggest impact in the NWSL in these last 10 games?
That's like a terrible question to ask me. I'm also incredibly biased, and I'm always going to say Sophia Smith will have the greatest impact because I see it day in and day out. Like, I live it. And so I'm going to go with Soph Smith.
I know. It's a really tough question. The idea of breaking them up is so sad because I just wish they could be the front 3 together everywhere. Soph Smith, great answer. I'm going Mal Swanson, though. I stan Mal. I think she had such an incredible Olympics. I think she's so dynamic, and I think that her Chicago team really relies on her in moments like this. So I am saying that Mal is going to be the strongest of the Triple Espresso. So some big news happened last week. The naming of new interim manager Landon Donovan at the San Diego Wave. So let's just quickly recap what's been going on with the Wave. Casey Stoney, their coach since the inception of the club back in 2021, was relieved of her position in June as we approached summer break. Folks were shocked. Stoney had a hugely winning record and had led the Wave to 2 trophies, the 2023 Shield and the 2024 Challenge Cup. But the Wave were off to kind of a rocky start, 3, 6, and 7 with just 15 points. Over the summer, the Wave were looking for a manager to step in. I'm not sure anybody was expecting this, the naming of Landon Donovan. So Landon Donovan was named interim head coach for just the remainder of the season, relieving caretaker manager Paul Buckle. And Landon is, of course, known for his time with the men's national team, as well as in the MLS with the LA Galaxy. He won 6 MLS Cups. He's still the record holder for both goals and assists for the U.S. men's national team. He was a 6-time MLS Best 11, the MVP in 2009. He won the Golden Boot in 2008. Overall, obviously super successful as a player. He does have some coaching experience, having spent 3 years coaching the San Diego Loyal of the USL, a team that no longer exists due to the failure of the club finding a long-term home venue. And Landon also has his USSF A senior coaching license. As a head coach in the USL, Landon's record was 39 wins, 30 losses, and 17 ties. Took his team to the playoffs 2 years in a row, but they exited in the quarterfinals. So this naming has been met with, I'll say, surprise from the women's soccer community. And Becky, I want to just talk about this. What are your initial thoughts hearing that Landon Donovan is the new head coach of the San Diego Wave?
Well, I guess what were some of the surprise comments that you're talking about?
Well, I mean, obviously there were just a lot of differing opinions on social media. Some were very strongly against Landon Donovan's appointment as head coach for his lack of experience with the women's game. And additionally, I do feel like I have to mention that Landon Donovan did tweet in 2016 about the U.S. men's and women's national teams not being paid equally, but instead getting paid based on the revenues that they brought in. The direct quote was something like, "I'm not for equal pay, I'm for fair pay." And I was trying to research this, and I saw some reports that he then did follow that up by saying that men and women doing the same work should be paid equally. I think it's safe to say that people will remember that original stance he took in saying that he doesn't believe in equal pay, he believes in fair pay. But my hope in this situation is that he's updated his original opinion based on new information that he learned, which hopefully we're all allowed to do. There are other questions rolling around, though, from the women's soccer community, like why did the Wave fire Casey Stoney without another plan in place? Why just then appoint 2 interims for temporary periods of time? Why not just let Casey Stoney, who's an incredibly accomplished and qualified coach, finish out the season? Or why not hire a more qualified female coach, or at least a women's soccer coach with experience coaching female soccer players? These are some of the questions that we want to discuss, and I'm recognizing we don't know all the answers, but Becky, Where is your head at with this new appointment for the San Diego Wave?
So I think this is difficult to weigh on. I wonder about the coaching search. If the timing is a little bit difficult, like, are coaches out of contract? Are they already tied up for next season? Like, was that something that they faced when they were going through a coaching search? Or have they not even gone through a very extensive coaching search? Maybe they just needed somebody to come in for these last 10 games and then like they'll start the process. Like, I don't know about any of that, obviously. Yeah. But I will say that like Casey Stoney, what she did with San Diego was really impressive, especially with an expansion team. She came from, Manchester United, where she also was very successful. She's been around the women's game as both a player and a coach. So I think she understands the women's game. She understands this world. And I don't know a lot about Landon, but I don't think he has that experience of living the women's game, of the ups and downs that we've gone through, both as a sport, as a league in the NWSL, as players. And I think back to my time earlier this season when Rob Gale became our interim, and the things that we as Portland needed to kind of right the ship. And we needed somebody to inject some energy and some competitiveness. And so I wonder what San Diego's goals are for these last 10 games, because I think that might make more sense why they hired Landon. Like, maybe Landon's coming in as somebody to like inject that motivation, or just like have some change and something new, and like, let's just add a different X factor into this combination and see what happens. And so I think it'd be really interesting to know what San Diego is going for. But I also like what you said about, is it a prerequisite to have coached women to then be in the NWSL? I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think it then makes it exceedingly more difficult to be successful if you haven't coached women at a high level. I think it helps to know the players, to know the league, to know the world. And he's going to be thrown into something where, compared to the MLS, like, the resources are different, the season is different. Obviously, the players are different. Like, so there's just going to be a lot that he's going to need to get
wrap his head around and understand.
A lot. And 10 games is not a lot of games when all of it is so new. But if the goal is just for him to be thrown in and to like stir stuff up, like, that would be maybe considered a success for him. And
maybe it's like, it is interim head coach. So maybe, to your point, like what happened with you guys, if the players can buy into this, maybe it's enough for 10 games to just be like, hey, we have a new coach and we're all going to buy in and we're going to do this for the next 3 months. And like, maybe it's enough of a spark to like ignite some change and some more goal scoring. I think something else you said that was really interesting, Becky, is like, what is San Diego's goal here? San Diego has been in the media a lot lately for firing Casey Stoney. There has been some discussion of if their front office has been creating a healthy environment or a toxic environment. And is there a world in which San Diego almost wanted to change the narrative and get control back of the narrative and just appoint somebody who was going to create a splash and cause a lot of headlines and move the storyline along and away from these other things that they didn't want people talking about anymore? Are they more so looking to perform in the Champions Cup, in this Concacaf World Cup qualifying process? Is that their priority? And do they think that for some reason Landon can get a couple of wins in those games? Or are they trying to make playoffs and compete for a championship? Like, we obviously don't have insight into the truth of all that. But look, I think it's a weird one. I think it's super interesting. We hear the criticisms of he does not have enough coaching experience. He has no experience coaching women. There is an idea that sometimes players make good coaches, and there's an idea that sometimes players don't make good coaches. Like, having been a player does not qualify you to be a coach. But Landon, that's not the case. He does have his coaching license. He has coached for 3 years. Something else that I keep coming back to is like, was he the best available option? And Becky, you alluded to this. Like, is there just a gap in the options to coach at this level that he was actually at the top of the list and he's actually the most qualified? I do not know the answer to that question. So I did read this in a San Diego Union Tribune article written by Ryan Finley about Jill Ellis's search for a new head coach. And it says, Ellis messaged Donovan looking for someone to coach the team through the end of the season. Could he recommend a candidate? And now this is Landon Donovan speaking, and he says, I thought about it for a little bit. I didn't respond for a few hours. I talked to my wife and I said, that could be interesting. And so I sent Jill a message back and said, there are some people I could think of, but I would also be interested if you want to have that conversation. And she called and we started the process. Donovan said he spent a couple weeks really digging deep to make sure he was ready for the job, knowing that there were differences between the women's and men's games. He watched the team practice and was sold.
So right off the bat, the fact that Jill Ellis texted Landon to even ask for possible ideas for coaching candidates, like that's fascinating to me. And I don't know if that's like a normal process that you kind of like use your network to see who's available or not. But that's interesting that happened. I
think it also says to me, Becky, that they were like Landon was in the area. He had just coached he recently had coached a USL team in San Diego. He clearly has ties to San Diego. Maybe Jill, like you said, she's leaning on a network of people in San Diego. Maybe there was this prerequisite that they wanted someone local, or maybe it was just doing a national or a global search at this point in the season was out of the question. Maybe it would have taken way too long. And they really are just looking for an interim soccer person to take over and to try to right the ship a little bit. San Diego has had, I would say, a lot of trouble scoring goals. They've scored just 12 goals in 16 matches so far this season, the third worst mark in the 14-team league. This is, again, from the San Diego Union Tribune article. It's been nearly 2 months since San Diego scored a regular season goal, which isn't really fair because the league hasn't been going on either. But, I mean, look, do I think there's clearly like a gap in women's soccer coaches in the U.S. being qualified and ready to take on the head coaching job of an NWSL team? Yes. If Landon Donovan is committed to growing the women's game and this is a career that he wants to be in women's soccer, maybe it's a pretty steep jump. It's a pretty big first step, but we'll see how it goes. Like, time will tell if this was too high of a step to be the head coach. Time will tell if the San Diego Wave sneak into playoffs and we're all saying, wow, former players make great coaches still. It's like we're going to find out. I think one other question that I want to answer about this is this fair to the players? Is Landon familiar enough and experienced enough to coach Naomi Girma and Alex Morgan and Jaden Shaw and all of these San Diego Wave players?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to answer that. And I will say in some cases, like some of these players that you just mentioned, like an Alex Morgan, like she has so much experience and has had so many different coaches, so many different environments. Like she very well knows the game better than Landon. You know, like maybe she's surpassed the coach and maybe she's been surpassing coaches for a while now.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of like where we are at right now until I think this next crop of player decides like, hey, I'm going to get my coaching certificates. I'm going to come back to the game. I'm going to build my way back up, get to these positions. So I don't think that's a fair question because I think there are players in this league that surpass the coaches in certain aspects just based off their playing careers alone and the experiences that they've had. I think if I am a player in that San Diego locker room, I am wanting to know what the goal is for these next 10 games, what the goal is long-term when it comes to appointing a coach so that I have some idea what we're trying to do and to accomplish. And then I'd have a better idea, like how I should feel about this situation. You know, if he's coming in and he's just here to train, to motivate, maybe even it's just to like you said with the attack. He's going to primarily work with the attack.
Try to score goals.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's scored a lot of goals in his career, so he knows how to do that. So that I feel like then you could have like a little bit more grace with the appointment. So for me, like, and I just always want to know all the facts. Like, I just want to know what the plan is.
This is a really tough one, though, Becky. Like, I think that I want San Diego to succeed. I want these players to have a good environment. And I think this is the place for us to ask some of these questions. I wish them the best of luck. I hope that it works out. But we're asking questions because we care about who is employed by this league, why they're employed by this league, and what the experience the players are having is. So I'm asking questions, but I wish them luck. And honestly, I hope it goes well. Okay, so before we let you go, let's talk about what's popping outside the NWSL. Speaking of what's popping, Becky, did you ever pop your collar when you were going to school?
I think a little bit at the University of Virginia. I think that was like a thing, but I like really regret it now.
I do too. I used to wear two. I only did this like one time and then I realized I just wasn't preppy, but I used to wear like 2 polos and like I'd pop one of the collars. I know.
I mean, there were kids at my school that would have like 3. So don't feel too bad about yourself.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Also, further speaking about what's poppin', did you see Jack Harlow is now part of the Racing Louisville and Lou City ownership group?
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
I know. Very exciting. Okay, well, let's move on. We have to talk about things that are happening outside of the NWSL. So some transfers that went on. Arsenal have added Barcelona's Mariona Caldente, but they have lost Viv Miedema to Manchester City. So that's a big change for the WSL. Chelsea have added Lucy Bronze, which is a huge addition. Lucy Bronze just bops between the top 5 teams, and she's just like, I'm just going to win everywhere I go.
Yeah, rough life.
I know, it's pretty sick. She literally wins everywhere she goes. But Chelsea, with the addition of Lucy Bronze, they lose Fran Kirby to Brighton. And then Manchester United's Mary Earps is headed over to PSG. So some big changes for the WSL, which kicks off in a few weeks. So a lot more news to come out of England. And I'm really excited to see what changes are inbound as the WSL kicks off without Emma Hayes for the first time in more than a decade. Okay, in other news, the USL Super League kicked off this past weekend. And I actually interviewed league president Amanda Vandervoort a few weeks ago about this new league. You can listen to that on this podcast feed or on our YouTube channel. And Becky, it was like really interesting to chat with her. I definitely found myself with a lot of questions and I learned a lot in the interview. So I recommend people go back and listen to it. But I was just feeling a little bit defensive of the NWSL, like wondering how the US can sustain 2 professional women's soccer leagues. And I'm just wondering how you feel about that or what you think about the USL in general.
Oh, that's fascinating. I love that you were defensive of the NWSL, and I can totally see why. I know we've had this discussion before where you were defensive and I was kind of like, well, this is a great opportunity for more players to get playing time. And so I see like the pros and cons. I guess I'm interested to know like what are the ultimate goals for the league? Like what did Amanda say about what she wants to do?
Yeah, so she kept coming back to the idea that she thinks this league will help develop talent for our national team. She said that like 2 or 3 times in the interview, which I think is a great goal. I think, again, it's like you just referenced, like it is providing more opportunities for more players to play professional women's soccer. Obviously, that's a good thing. I think there are just some questions around sustaining more markets and more teams. It's a totally different business model. The season is even a little bit different. They're going to have like a fall season and then a spring season. She has talked to me a lot about developing their global transfer market. So the business model is just a little bit different. And I do recommend people go back and listen to the whole interview. But I tried to treat it like a 101. And so I really asked entry-level questions that I needed the answers to. But Amanda did a really good job answering these questions. I think it's safe to say the league is in good hands. We saw the first inaugural games kick off this weekend. The Spokane, Washington-based team, Zephyr FC, played in front of a sold-out crowd. And then the Charlotte, North Carolina-based Carolina Ascent actually set a statewide attendance record, which I kind of narrowed my eyes at that for any single professional women's soccer game in the Carolinas with 10,553 fans. And I was like, has the Courage never had that many fans?
Yeah. Have they? I thought that also strikes me as a little odd because I could have sworn that how big is that stadium that the Courage play in?
Oh my God. North Carolina Courage record is 10,434 fans. So they did just beat the record.
Wow. That's cool.
It's cool. But again, I'm kind of like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what about the Courage? So
so defensive.
It's so interesting. We have seen some NWSL players go on loan or just get transferred into this new Super League. So again, like, I think it's a good thing. Vicky Bruce of the Carolina Ascent scored the league's first goal, which is very exciting. I think it can be a good thing. I'm excited to see how the league continues to go. We have plenty more games to watch this season, and I wish them luck.
Did you ask Amanda if there is like a long-term goal of actually bringing both leagues together?
I did. I flat out, Becky, literally, this was so forward of me. I flat out said, is your goal to get bought by the NWSL? And she was like, no.
Oh, okay.
And then I said, why not just pair the two leagues together and use the USL Super League as like a feeder league? But you'll have to go to my interview with Amanda on our YouTube channel or in our podcast feed if you're interested in finding out the answer to that, because we're running out of time here. We have to go right to the inbox. We get an email from Evelyn that says, hello, Sam, Lynn, and Becky. I've listened to the podcast since the new feed started, and I'm hooked. I love watching women's soccer, and you all make it so accessible. I've convinced my family via PowerPoint presentation that we should go to the Gotham versus Portland game. And we're all so excited. Evelyn, I hope that I see you there. Evelyn's question is, if you were types of bread, what kind would you be? I see Becky as sourdough for obvious reasons, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I would love to see some more Gotham girls, AKB maybe, on the show, but honestly, every interview I've heard here is so insightful. Becky sourdough for obvious reasons?
I mean, it kind of just goes together, doesn't it?
Sour brun.
Yeah, sourdough. I had people in high school call me sourdough, so it's not far off. If I had to really choose a bread, I would like to be focaccia because I love focaccia and you can do so many different things with it. But I'll go with sourdough.
I love focaccia.
Yes, me too.
It's so good. I also love sourdough. I also love like a seeded loaf.
Are you making your own bread, by the way? Is that part of your summer camp activities?
I did make a loaf of bread last week.
Of course you did.
I did. It was just like a quick one that you didn't have to let like rise overnight. So it was just like a 2-hour rising situation, but it was delightful. But now that you mentioned focaccia, I might go make a loaf of focaccia because you know how you get to do the piano fingers on it?
Oh, will you send some to me?
Some bread?
Yeah. Will you bring it to Jersey?
I could maybe vacuum seal you a little fresh piece of focaccia.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay. I guess maybe I would be a seeded loaf. I don't know why.
Yeah, I was like, is there an analogy for either of us about why we would be this?
I don't know. What would Lynn be?
What would Lynn be?
Maybe I want to be a German pretzel.
Okay. Those are good.
Does that count?
I mean, why not? Seems bready.
Or no, you know what? I want to be cornbread.
Oh, good one.
We'll have to ask Lynn another time what she is. If anybody else has any bread-related or otherwise related questions, you can write to us at womensgamemib@menandblazers.com. Becky, we have reached the end of the episode, sadly, but Good Vibes is back, which is very, very happy. What good vibe do you want to leave our beautiful listeners with this week?
I think this is an odd one, but like so many of my teammates have been watching Love Island USA.
Oh.
And just having something to like discuss in our warm-up line
is so fun.
It's so fun. And so warm-up goes by so fast. Like warm-up is not my favorite part of practice. And so getting to just talk about all the relationships and all the mayhem and the chaos from Love Island has made it so lovely. So that's my good vibe.
I can't picture you watching Love Island, but I'm like so proud of you that you're doing it.
Oh, I mean, Zola and I love Love Island. We've been watching a bunch of the UK seasons. We just watched the US. The reunion happened. And so like, it's just nonstop drama.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been watching Emily in Paris. It's I don't know. It's only halfway through the first season. Hasn't quite got me yet, but I did have a good vibe to share. It's coming back to your own bed after you've been traveling for a couple of days. Pat and I went to Montreal this weekend. It's only 2 hours away from me here. And we just stayed over one night. And then when I got home in my own bed, I was just like, I love traveling, but I just also love coming home, you know?
Oh, I 1,000% agree with that one. Your own mattress, your own pillows, blankets.
And thin at the foot of your bed. Like, come on.
Lovely.
Well, I hope everybody has been enjoying Love Island, Emily in Paris, sleeping in their own beds. But that is it for this week's episode of Good Vibes FC. I really hope that you're subscribed to this podcast feed. If not, you can subscribe right now, you pickled pepper. It is available wherever you listen to podcasts. We are also on YouTube. We are also on Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and Threads at Women's Game MIB. This week, we have a Friendlies interview dropping on Thursday with Leah Williamson of Arsenal. We talked about so much stuff, how she learned to play piano for the BBC Concert Orchestra, her time at Arsenal. You know, she's been there for 18 years. She is like so incredible. She's such a fan favorite, and I was so honored to get the chance to speak to her. So make sure you check out that interview on Thursday. All right, everybody, that's it. Goodbye.
I'm Becky Sauerbrunn.
And I'm Sam Lewis, and this is Good Vibes FC. The podcast that's like back to school because we ignored the bit today and we forgot to do our homework. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.